A chilling piece of footage from a hotel elevator, a young woman acting strangely, as if hiding from someone or something. She enters, presses a series of buttons. The doors don't close. She peeks out into the hallway, then retreats back into the corner, a look of fear on her face. Then she begins a series of bizarre, almost theatrical hand gestures, her fingers twisting in the air. Finally, she steps out of the elevator and is gone. The elevator doors close and open and close again. She was never seen alive again. What happened to Elisa Lam in the final moments of her life? The answer is more terrifying and bizarre than you could ever imagine. I'm Detective Barack. If you're ready, let's get started. Our story begins in the winter of 2013 in a city known for making dreams come true, but also for hiding the darkest of nightmares, Los Angeles, California. At its center was Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old student from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. She was bright, adventurous, and filled with a curiosity for the world. This trip was a solo adventure, a journey of self-discovery across the American West Coast. She was chronicling her travels on her blog, sharing her thoughts, her hopes, and even her struggles with depression and bipolar disorder with the world. Her posts were honest, poetic, and deeply human. After visiting San Diego, she arrived in Los Angeles on January 26 with plans to head to Santa Cruz next. She was exploring, she was living, she was on the path she had set for herself. A crucial part of Elisa's routine was her connection to her family. Every single day, without fail, she would call her parents back home in British Columbia. It was a lifeline, a daily check-in that reassured them she was safe on her solo journey. But on January 31st, 2013, the day she was scheduled to check out of her hotel and leave Los Angeles, the phone never rang. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Her parents knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. Elisa Lam had vanished from the face of the earth, swallowed whole by the city of dreams, and more specifically, by the notorious hotel she had checked into just days before, the Cecil Hotel. To understand what happened to Elisa Lam, we must first understand where she was. The Cecil Hotel, located on Main Street in downtown Los Angeles, is not just a building, it's a place with a soul, a dark and troubled one. Built in the 1920s as a grand hotel for business travelers, its glamour quickly faded with the Great Depression. The Cecil's prime location became its curse as it bordered one of the most infamous and destitute areas in America, Skid Row. Over the decades, the hotel devolved. It became a place for transients, for the desperate, a haven for those living on the fringes of society. But it was more than just a cheap place to stay. The Cecil Hotel developed a reputation for something far more sinister. It became a magnet for death. The list of horrors within its walls is long and chilling. It was a known site for suicides, with numerous guests taking their own lives by leaping from its windows. But its corridors also played host to pure evil. In the mid-1880s, the infamous serial killer Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, used the Cecil as his base of operations. He would reportedly return to his cheap room covered in the blood of his victims, and no one would bat an eye. Years later, another serial killer, the Austrian journalist Jack Unterweger, would also call the Cecil home while he murdered local prostitutes. And the hotel's dark legacy is even rumored to be connected to one of Hollywood's most infamous unsolved crimes. Some believe it was one of the last places Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, was seen alive before her gruesome murder in 1947. This was the place Elisa Lam chose to stay. Why? Perhaps she was simply a budget-conscious traveler, unaware of the hotel's sordid past. Or perhaps, like many others, she was drawn to its mystery. Regardless of the reason, by checking into the Cecil, Elisa stepped into a place where the veil between the living and the dead feels terrifyingly thin. A place where stories don't just end, they get absorbed into the walls. When Elisa Lam failed to make her daily call home, panic began to set in for her family thousands of miles away in Canada. Their fears were quickly confirmed. The LAPD was notified and an official missing person investigation was launched. The Cecil Hotel became the epicenter of the search. Detectives entered Elisa's room expecting to find clues, a note, a sign of a struggle, anything. Instead, they found an eerie scene of a life paused mid-moment. Her laptop, her wallet, her identification, her prescription medications, all of her belongings were there, neatly arranged. Everything a person needs to exist in the modern world was in that room, except for the person herself. There was no indication of foul play, no sign that anyone had forced their way in or out. It was as if she had simply evaporated into thin air. The police conducted a thorough search of the hotel. They combed every floor, every public area, every back corridor. They brought in search dogs, hoping their powerful sense of smell could pick up a trail, but the dog's trail went cold right inside the hotel, leading nowhere. They checked the hotel's security footage, but Elisa was only seen inside, never appearing to leave the building after she checked in. The search expanded to the surrounding neighborhood. Detectives questioned local business owners and showed her photograph to people on Skid Row, but no one had seen her. How does a person become a ghost in one of the busiest cities on Earth? How can you walk out of a hotel and leave no trace? Days turned into agonizing weeks. The trail grew colder with every passing hour. Elisa's family flew to Los Angeles, desperate for answers, distributing flyers with her smiling face on them. But the city offered only silence. The investigation had hit a wall. With no leads and no witnesses, the LAPD made a decision that would change the course of the case forever. They decided to release the last known sighting of Elisa Lam to the public. And in doing so, they unleashed a piece of footage that would captivate, confuse, and terrify the entire world.
On February 15, 2013, with their investigation at a complete standstill, the Los Angeles Police Department released the hotel's elevator surveillance footage. It was a final, desperate plea for public help. They had no idea they were about to unleash an internet firestorm. The video is grainy, silent, and just under 4 minutes long, but those 4 minutes contain a sequence of events so bizarre, so unsettling, that they defy easy explanation. The video begins as the elevator doors slide open. We see Elisa Lam step in. At first, her movements seem normal. She leans forward and presses a series of floor buttons. Then she retreats to the corner and waits. But the doors, they don't close. They remain wide open. This is where things take a turn into the truly strange. Elisa, cautiously, peeks her head out of the elevator, looking both ways down the hallway. It's a quick, furtive movement, like someone checking to see if they're being followed. She then darts back inside, pressing herself against the wall, at one point tucking herself into the corner as if trying to hide from someone just out of the camera's view. Again, the doors refuse to close. After a few more moments of apparent fear, her entire demeanor changes. She steps back to the front of the elevator, and then she begins a series of slow, deliberate, almost ballet-like gestures with her hands. Her fingers twist and splay in the air. She seems to be talking to someone or something just beyond the door. It's impossible to tell if she's scared, playful, or in the grip of some kind of hallucination. Finally, she steps out of the elevator and moves to the left, disappearing from the frame. For the final minute of the video, the elevator itself becomes the main character. After Elisa is gone, the doors inexplicably slide shut. Then they open again, then shut again. They seem to be operating on a mind of their own, as if resetting. The world watched, and the world asked, what were we seeing? Was she hiding from a real person who was pursuing her? Was she having a severe psychotic episode, her mind creating a threat that wasn't there? Was she under the influence of an unknown substance? And why, for the love of God, did the elevator doors not close when she was inside, only to begin working perfectly the moment she left? The video, released to find a missing girl, had instead given birth to a digital ghost, replayed millions of times, trapped forever in those 4 minutes of silent, grainy footage. The mystery of Elisa Lam was no longer just a Los Angeles police case. It was now a global obsession.
The release of the elevator footage did more than just generate tips for the police. It ignited a global firestorm. In the digital age, a mystery this compelling doesn't stay quiet for long. The video spread across YouTube, Reddit forums, and true crime blogs like wildfire. Elisa Lam's final, puzzling moments became a puzzle that millions of people felt they needed to solve. The internet did what the internet does best. It became obsessed. A new breed of investigator emerged, the online detectives, the armchair sleuths. From their bedrooms and home offices across the world, they began their own unofficial investigation. Every single second of the 4-minute video was dissected with a level of scrutiny that would rival any forensic lab. They stabilized the shaky footage, they tried to read her lips, they zoomed in on the reflection in the elevator buttons, searching for a hidden figure. Some argued that the video had been tampered with. They pointed to the blurred-out timestamp and the fact that some portions seemed to be slowed down, suggesting that nearly a minute of footage might have been edited out by police or the hotel. Why? What was being hidden? Theories began to multiply and diverge, each leading down its own dark rabbit hole. Was the person she was hiding from edited out of the video?
Were her strange hand gestures a form of sign language, a secret message? Was the malfunctioning elevator a sign of paranormal interference in a hotel already infamous for it? But this global obsession had a dark side. In their fervor to solve the mystery, some online communities crossed the line from investigation to accusation. They found a black metal musician from Mexico who had once posted videos of himself at the Cecil Hotel. They latched onto his dark artistic persona and lyrics about death, and soon a digital witch hunt was underway. He was bombarded with death threats and accusations, his name and face plastered across the internet as Elisa Lam's murderer. The man, whose only crime was an unfortunate coincidence, had his life turned upside down. He was, of course, completely innocent. The case of Elisa Lam had become a modern phenomenon. It showed the power of a connected world to scrutinize evidence on a massive scale. But it also served as a chilling cautionary tale about the dangers of mob justice in the digital age. While millions of eyes were glued to a grainy video trying to decipher a digital ghost, the real, tragic truth was waiting to be found not in the ones and zeros of the internet, but in a dark, forgotten place much closer to where she was last seen. While the world was lost in a digital mystery, dissecting every frame of the elevator video, a much grimmer reality was beginning to surface back at the Cecil Hotel. In the days following the video's release, hotel guests began to complain. At first, the reports were minor annoyances, low water pressure in the showers. Then the complaints became more troubling. Guests reported that the water coming from their taps had a strange, sweetish, and unpleasant taste. Soon after, they noticed its color, a dark, murky hue that was deeply unsettling. The water would run black for a few seconds before clearing. On the morning of February 19th, 19 days after Elisa Lam was last seen, hotel guest complaints had become too numerous to ignore. The hotel sent a maintenance worker, Santiago Lopez, to investigate the source of the problem. His job was simple: go to the roof and check the massive water cisterns that supplied the hotel's guest rooms, kitchen, and coffee shop. The hotel roof was a restricted area, secured by a locked and alarmed door. Lopez, with his master key, was one of the few people with access. He made his way to the roof and approached the 4 large cylindrical water tanks that stood there, each about 10 feet tall. He noticed that the hatch on one of the main tanks was open. This was unusual. He placed a ladder against the massive tank and climbed up. He peered down into the dark water inside, looking for the cause of the pressure issue. And then he saw it. Something was at the bottom, face up, just a few feet below the surface. At first, it was hard to comprehend. But as his eyes adjusted, the horrifying truth became clear. Floating naked in the water, her clothes apparently in the tank with her, was the body of a young woman. Her skin was pale. She was lifeless. It was Elisa Lam. The search was over, but the horror was just beginning. The Los Angeles County Department of Public Health immediately issued a do not drink order for the hotel. The implications of the discovery were sickening. For up to 19 days, the residents and guests of the Cecil Hotel had been bathing, brushing their teeth, and drinking water from the very tank where her body lay decomposing. The discovery of her body didn't provide answers. It only created a series of terrifying, seemingly impossible questions. The most important one of all: how in the world did she get in there? The discovery of Elisa Lam's body was a grim conclusion to the search, but for investigators and a captivated public, it was supposed to be the beginning of an explanation. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office performed a full autopsy, and everyone waited for the cold, hard facts to finally shed light on this bizarre case. The official report was released in June, 4 months after her body was found. The conclusion was stated in just 3 words: accidental drowning. As a significant contributing factor, the coroner listed her bipolar disorder. The case, officially, was closed. But did it provide answers? For many, it only created a storm of confusion. The toxicology report was one of the most crucial elements. It found traces of her prescribed medications for bipolar disorder and depression, but it found no alcohol, no illicit drugs like cocaine, ecstasy, or heroin. This immediately debunked the popular theory that she was under the influence of some unknown party drug that caused her to hallucinate in the elevator. Furthermore, and perhaps most importantly, the physical examination of her body found no evidence of physical trauma. There were no signs of a struggle, no bruises, no cuts, no indications of sexual assault. The police had been searching for a monster, a predator who had pursued her in the hallway and done the unthinkable. But according to the coroner's findings, there was no monster. There was no foul play. So the official story was this. Elisa Lam, likely in the midst of a severe manic episode due to her bipolar disorder, somehow made her way to the roof, climbed into the water tank, and accidentally drowned. But how could this be? An accident? The report, which was meant to provide a logical conclusion, seemed to defy all logic. If it was an accident, how does one accidentally climb onto a restricted hotel roof? How do you accidentally get inside a 10-foot-tall water tank with a heavy, difficult-to-open lid? And if she was in the throes of a psychotic episode, how did she manage to get the lid closed again from the inside? The autopsy report, intended to be the final chapter in the tragic story of Elisa Lam, instead became the most infuriating page. It gave a cause of death, but it explained nothing about the impossible journey she took to get there. It closed the case file, but it blew the mystery wide open, and it forced everyone to ask a question that was even more daunting than who, the question of how. The verdict was accidental drowning, but for this to be an accident, Elisa Lam would have had to complete a journey that seems less like a tragic misstep and more like a mission impossible. Let's trace the path the authorities claim she took, a path that, with every step, defies logic. Her last known location was the 14th floor. The rooftop was her final destination. The first and most obvious obstacle was the rooftop access door. According to hotel staff, this door was supposed to be locked. Not only was it locked, but it was also fitted with an alarm that would have automatically notified the front desk if it was opened. Hotel employees were adamant that this alarm was in working order and that it never went off during the time Elisa was missing. So, did she find the door miraculously unlocked and the alarm conveniently disabled? Or was there another way? Investigators theorize she could have used the hotel's external fire escape. To do this, she would have had to climb out of a window on the 14th floor, navigate to the rickety metal structure, and then climb up to the roof. Picture this, a young woman, alone, in the dead of night, undertaking a dangerous and physically demanding climb up the side of a tall building. It's a feat that would require significant nerve and physical strength. But let's assume she did it. Let's assume she made it to the roof. Her challenge had only just begun. The 4 water cisterns on the roof are colossal structures. They stand roughly 10 feet tall and 4.5 feet in diameter, each holding thousands of gallons of water. They are imposing industrial containers, not something you simply stumble into. To get to the top of the tank where she was found, she would have had to climb a ladder attached to its side. Then comes the most difficult part of all. The circular lid at the top of the tank was a heavy metal hatch. The maintenance worker who found her body noted that it was heavy and would have been difficult to lift. Could a 5-foot 5-inch woman acting alone have had the strength to slide that heavy lid open by herself? And even if she managed all of that, bypassing a locked and alarmed door, climbing a treacherous fire escape, scaling the tank's ladder, and lifting the heavy lid, we are left with the final haunting question. How could she have closed the lid from inside the tank? While the maintenance worker found the lid open, the sheer impossibility of closing it from within has fueled countless theories. It would be a final, baffling act in a series of improbable events. Each step on this path is a roadblock. Each obstacle seems almost insurmountable for one person, especially someone in a state of distress. The official explanation doesn't describe a simple accident, it describes a feat that seems to require impossible strength, stealth, and determination. And that is why, for so many people, the official story is simply unbelievable.
The official report may say accident, but for a vast number of people, the facts simply don't add up. The logistical impossibilities of her final journey point to a far darker explanation. Let's entertain the theory that the Los Angeles Police Department couldn't prove, but that many believe to be the truth. Elisa Lam did not go to that rooftop alone. She was murdered. This theory reframes everything we've seen. Let's start with the elevator video. Suddenly, her actions are not the product of a troubled mind, but the rational terror of a woman in grave danger. She isn't hiding from a hallucination, she is hiding from a real person, a human predator. She gets in the elevator, frantically trying to get the doors to close to escape. When they don't, she cautiously peeks into the hallway, trying to see if her pursuer is still there. Her bizarre hand gestures could be interpreted as a desperate attempt to reason with someone just out of frame, pleading with them. Then, there is the impossible route to the roof. The locked and alarmed door is no longer a mystery. If someone with a key, perhaps a hotel employee or a long-term resident with knowledge of the building's layout, was forcing her or leading her up there, the difficult fire escape climb becomes a violent abduction. And the water tank itself becomes the most damning piece of evidence for foul play. A lone person struggling with a heavy lid is one thing. A perpetrator, fueled by adrenaline and a desire to hide their crime, forcing it open is far more plausible. They could have overpowered her, put her in the tank, either dead or alive, and then crucially, they would have closed the lid behind her. Why? To conceal the body, to delay its discovery, to taint the evidence. This single act, closing the lid, is something Elisa almost certainly could not have done herself from inside. Her being found naked is another deeply suspicious detail. While the autopsy found no evidence of sexual assault, it's possible her killer removed her clothes to dispose of potential DNA evidence, throwing them into the tank with her. So who could have done this? Was it a stranger who followed her into the hotel, an opportunistic resident from the Cecil's darker floors, or someone who worked there, who knew the building's secrets and how to move through it unseen? But this theory has one major gaping hole: the autopsy report. If she was attacked, where were the signs of a struggle? Where were the bruises, the cuts, the DNA of her killer under her fingernails? Could a murder be so perfectly executed that it leaves behind no physical evidence? Or had 19 days of decomposition in the water erased all traces of the crime? The police had no suspect, no weapon, and a coroner's report that gave them nothing to work with. They couldn't prove a murder had happened. But for many, the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. It only suggests a killer who was careful, and a truth that now lies forever submerged in that dark, tainted water.
The official explanation for Elisa Lam's death paints a picture that is, in its own way, just as terrifying as a murder. It suggests there was no monster in the hallways of the Cecil Hotel. The monster, it claims, was inside Elisa's own mind. To understand this theory, we must listen to Elisa herself. Through her blog, which she updated during her travels, she was incredibly open and articulate about her lifelong struggle with severe bipolar I disorder and depression. She called it her illness, a constant companion that could send her spiraling into euphoric highs and crippling lows. She wrote about the challenges of managing her medication, the feeling of losing control, and the relapse that was always a looming threat. According to this theory, Elisa was in the midst of a severe manic episode, possibly accompanied by psychosis. This would completely recontextualize the elevator video. Her strange, Amber Rystham behavior is no longer seen as a reaction to an external threat, but as a symptom of an internal crisis. She wasn't hiding from a person. She may have been in the grip of a persecutory delusion, hiding from imagined threats. Her hand gestures weren't a conversation with a killer, but the conversation with figures that existed only in her mind. She wasn't afraid of someone in the hallway, she was afraid of reality itself. The autopsy's toxicology report is the cornerstone of this argument. It showed she had taken her prescribed medications, but the levels in her system were low. This suggests she may have been under-medicating, or had perhaps stopped taking her full dose in the days leading up to her death. For someone with severe bipolar disorder, this can be a catastrophic trigger for a manic or psychotic episode. This explanation accounts for her bizarre behavior and aligns with the coroner's findings of no foul play. It posits that in her altered state, she felt a compulsive need to hide, to find safety. This irrational drive could have led her to seek out the most remote and inaccessible place she could find, the rooftop. Fueled by manic energy and a detachment from the normal perception of danger, she may have accomplished the seemingly impossible physical feats required to get there. The climb up the fire escape, the scaling of the ladder, these would not be seen as risks but as necessary steps towards an irrational goal. But this is where the theory, for many, begins to break down. Does a mental health crisis grant superhuman strength to lift a heavy metal lid? Does it explain how that lid could have been closed from the inside? It provides a powerful why, but it struggles profoundly with the how. It's a tragic, lonely, and deeply unsettling possibility that Elisa Lam, a bright and adventurous young woman, was ultimately consumed not by a human predator, but by the very illness she fought so bravely to control. It proposes a death that was, in the end, a tragic, solitary accident. But for an accident, it required an almost unbelievable sequence of impossible events. Just when this case seems to be a tragic puzzle of human psychology and forensic science, it takes a sharp turn into the realm of the truly bizarre. The story of Elisa Lam is haunted by a series of coincidences so specific, so eerie, that they have fueled endless speculation and transformed a simple tragedy into a modern urban legend. For some, these are not coincidences at all, but signs of something far stranger at play. The first and most stunning of these is what's known as the Lam-Elisa test. In the weeks immediately following the discovery of Elisa's body, a major and persistent tuberculosis outbreak was spreading through Skid Row, the neighborhood right on the Cecil Hotel's doorstep. The standard screening test used to detect this specific type of tuberculosis is called the lipoarabinomannan enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. The shorthand for this test? Lam-Elisa. Let that sink in. A young woman named Elisa Lam dies under mysterious circumstances in a hotel at the epicenter of a deadly outbreak, and the medical test used to fight that outbreak bears her exact name, just reversed. The mathematical odds of such a thing happening are astronomical. It feels less like a coincidence and more like a chilling message from the universe. But the uncanny connections don't stop there. The details of Elisa's death bear a shocking resemblance to the 2005 horror film Dark Water. In the movie, a mother and her young daughter move into a rundown apartment building. They soon become plagued by foul, dark-colored water leaking from the taps and ceilings. The mystery deepens until the horrifying climax. The source of the tainted water is revealed to be the body of a young girl who had gone missing and had drowned in the building's rooftop water tank. The parallels are almost a perfect mirror of what happened at the Cecil, a rundown building with a dark past, complaints from residents about strange dark water, and the final horrifying discovery of a young woman's body floating in a rooftop water tank. To make it even stranger, in the movie, the mother's name is Dahlia, echoing the Cecil Hotel's connection to the Black Dahlia mystery, and the deceased girl's name is Cecilia, the female version of Cecil. Are these just random, meaningless patterns in a chaotic world, or are they something more? For the rational mind, they are simply incredible coincidences. But for those who have followed this case into the darkest corners of the internet, these details are too specific to ignore. They add a layer of supernatural dread to the story, suggesting that the fabric of reality around the Cecil Hotel on that fateful night was somehow thin.
We have examined the possibility of a human monster and the tragedy of an internal battle. Both theories are compelling, yet both leave critical, logic-defying gaps in the narrative. And so we must venture into the darkness and consider a third possibility, a theory that cannot be proven by forensics or autopsy reports, but one that stubbornly clings to this case because of where it happened. What if the killer wasn't a person at all? What if the killer was the Cecil Hotel itself? This is not a conclusion one reaches lightly, but the history of the Cecil is not just a list of tragic events. It is a long, sustained symphony of human misery. Suicides, murders, the presence of serial killers like Richard Ramirez and Jack Unterweger. Places, some believe, can absorb the energy of the events that happen within them. And if that's true, the Cecil Hotel isn't just a building, it's a psychic stain, a nexus of dark energy, saturated with decades of pain, fear, and violent death. Let's look at the evidence again, but this time through a paranormal lens. The elevator video is transformed. Elisa is not hiding from a person, nor is she hallucinating. She's reacting to something real, but something unseen by the camera. Her cautious peeking, her retreat into the corner, it's a classic depiction of someone sensing a spectral presence. And her strange hand gestures, perhaps an attempt to communicate with, or even ward off an entity in the hallway. The elevator's refusal to function is no longer a mechanical glitch. In paranormal lore, spirits are often said to interfere with electronics. What if a malevolent force was holding those doors open, trapping her, toying with her before preventing her escape? And what of her impossible journey to the roof? In this theory, she wasn't led by a killer, but lured by a spirit. The locked and alarmed door could have been opened for her by an unseen hand. She could have been compelled to climb the fire escape, her fear numbed by a supernatural influence. The incredible strength needed to lift the heavy tank lid might not have been her own. This theory offers an explanation for why the police found no evidence of a struggle or another person's DNA. The attacker left no physical traces because it had no physical body. It also frames Elisa as a particularly vulnerable target. Could it be that her fragile mental state, her battle with her own mind, made her more open, more susceptible to the dark whispers within the hotel's walls? Perhaps the Cecil preyed on her vulnerability, drawing her into its long and tragic history. Is it possible that Elisa Lam was the latest victim in a long line of souls claimed by the malevolent intelligence of the Cecil Hotel? It is a terrifying thought, one that exists beyond the reach of proof, but in a case so filled with impossibilities and chilling coincidences. For many, the paranormal explanation is the only one that seems to fit the bizarre and horrifying facts.
In the wake of the coroner's report, while the internet debated murder and ghosts, David and Elisa Lam were left with only grief and a profound sense of injustice. The official verdict of an accidental drowning was not an answer for them. Their daughter was dead, and in their eyes, her death was the direct result of a dangerously unsafe environment. So, in September 2013, they did what any family seeking accountability would do. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Cecil Hotel. The core of their argument was simple and powerful: negligence. Their lawsuit claimed that the hotel had a fundamental duty to ensure the safety of its guests. They argued that the hotel failed spectacularly in this duty by allowing unreasonable risks of danger to exist on its premises. Specifically, they focused on the rooftop water tanks. Why weren't they properly secured? Why was it possible for a guest, or anyone for that matter, to gain access to the hotel's water supply? Their lawyer argued that this was an accident waiting to happen, and that if the tanks had been properly locked, Elisa might still be alive today. The hotel's defense was equally straightforward. Their lawyers argued that the hotel could not have possibly foreseen such a bizarre and unprecedented event. They contended that Elisa's death occurred in a restricted area of the hotel, the rooftop, where guests were not permitted to go. Because the hotel had no reason to believe a guest would find their way to the roof and attempt to climb into a water tank, they argued they could not be held liable for what happened there. To them, the tragedy was not a failure of hotel security, but the unforeseeable result of Elisa's own actions, likely stemming from her mental health crisis. The legal battle culminated in 2015. The verdict was a crushing blow to the Lam family. A Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Howard Halm dismissed the lawsuit. He sided with the hotel, ruling that the death was unforeseeable because it happened in an area off-limits to guests. Legally, the hotel was not responsible. The dismissal of the lawsuit closed the final official door on the case. For Elisa's parents, there would be no damages, no admission of fault from the hotel, and no legal accountability for their daughter's death. The court's decision echoed the coroner's report. It provided a legal conclusion, but for many, it offered no real sense of justice or resolution. The fight was over, but the questions and the pain remained.
Years have passed since Elisa Lam's body was discovered in that dark water tank. The Cecil Hotel has since been rebranded, its name changed in an attempt to wash away the stain of its past. The online forums have grown quieter, but the story endures. Why? Out of all the tragic cases in the world, why does the mystery of Elisa Lam still hold such a powerful grip on our collective imagination? Perhaps it's because this case is a perfect storm of our deepest fears. It touches upon the fear of the unknown, the fear of vulnerability, and the terrifying possibility that the world is not as it seems. It's a story that operates on multiple levels of terror. On one level, it's a very human tragedy. It's the story of a young woman's lonely battle with a severe mental illness, a battle that may have tragically ended in the most bewildering of circumstances. It's a heartbreaking reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the silent struggles that so many face alone. On another level, it's a potential crime story, a chilling whodunit. It taps into our fear of human evil, the idea that a predator could be lurking just out of frame, in a hotel hallway, capable of committing a perfect, untraceable crime and getting away with it. And finally, it brushes against the supernatural, the eerie hotel, the impossible coincidences, the inexplicable details. They whisper of a reality beyond our own, a world where dark places hold dark power, and where some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. The mystery of Elisa Lam is not just a collection of facts. It has become a modern myth. The grainy elevator footage is its sacred text, a silent film that we can watch 1,000 times and never fully comprehend. Was she a victim of murder, a victim of her own mind, or a victim of a haunted hotel? Each theory is as compelling as it is incomplete. Each explanation leaves us with more questions than answers. And maybe that is the true reason we can't look away. Elisa Lam's story is a mirror. It reflects our desire to find order in chaos, to find answers in the darkness. But her story offers none. It is a puzzle with missing pieces, a lock without a key. It is a haunting, unresolved chord that will likely echo forever, a permanent resident in the dark corridors of unsolved mysteries.
The Cecil Hotel is rumored to be one of the last places she was seen alive.
In 1947, in the glittering, sun-drenched streets of post-war Los Angeles, a young woman with dreams of stardom vanished. Her name was Elizabeth Short. When she was found, it was not in the bright lights of Hollywood, but in a vacant lot, her body posed in a gruesome tableau that would shock the world and haunt the city forever. The press called her the Black Dahlia. Her murder sparked one of the largest manhunts in American history, but her killer was never found. They were a phantom who taunted the police and then disappeared into thin air, leaving behind a cold case that has become Hollywood's most infamous and chilling secret. Join us next time as Detective Barack peels back the layers of glamour and decay to investigate the brutal, unsolved murder of the Black Dahlia. The end, for now.